A black woman in a business suit. A small parking mistake. A cop with a short temper. What should have been a simple correction turned into public humiliation until everything flipped in an instant. Because this woman wasn't just anyone. She was a prosecutor. And she knew the law better than the man trying to bend it. If you believe in justice, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and share this video. Let's make sure the world never looks away again. The woman had committed a minor parking violation of fleeting inconvenience, but that alone was enough to make her the target of an annoyed patrol officer. She tried to cooperate, offering to adjust her car's position immediately. Instead of professionalism, she was met with arrogance, intrusive questions, and a flat refusal to de-escalate. When she calmly pointed out that his behavior was inappropriate and beyond his authority, the officer snapped. She was forced to stand there and endure demeaning, racially charged insults, words no one should ever hear, especially from someone sworn to uphold the law. And then, just because she dared to speak up, just because she refused to silently accept the abuse, the officer handcuffed her, roughly. Publicly, her hands locked behind her back like a criminal's, in the middle of a crowded street, surrounded by curious, whispering strangers. The officer smirked, convinced he'd taught her a lesson. But what he didn't know was that this so-called lesson would come at a cost to his own career. He had made a critical mistake fueled by prejudice and unchecked power. He had no idea who she was, and he had no idea how far-reaching the consequences would be. What happened next at the police station would shake everything. The truth was coming. And justice, real justice, was about to demand a price. Late afternoon cast a pale yellow hue over the office buildings and busy sidewalks near the district courthouse. Rush hour traffic crept along, punctuated by honking horns and loud chatter. Serena Thompson, a black woman in her 40s, had just stepped out of a tense court session. She wore a fitted charcoal gray business suit, her sharp, intelligent face showing exhaustion but remaining composed. She needed to stop by her partner's office a few blocks away to collect some paperwork before heading home. Serena drove her silver Ford Fusion slowly, scanning for a parking spot on the already crowded street. Finally, she found a narrow space between two cars. In her haste, she managed to parallel park, though not perfectly. The rear of her car stuck out slightly. It wasn't blocking traffic or causing danger, but it wasn't perfectly aligned either. She figured she would be in and out in just a few minutes. Just as she locked the car and turned to walk away, a city police cruiser pulled up. Officer Jason Burke, a white man in his early 30s, was patrolling alone. He had a permanent frown, and as he passed Serena's car, he had to swerve slightly to avoid the back end. That small inconvenience, paired with the sight of a well-dressed black woman stepping out of a nice car, lit a fire of bias in him. Another arrogant, lawless person, he thought, already labeling her. He turned on the cruiser's red and blue lights, stopped behind Serena's car, and stepped out with a heavy gait and heavy attitude. "Hey, what kind of parking is that?" Burke barked without a greeting, his voice loud and aggressive. "Don't you think you're blocking the way?" Startled by his tone, Serena turned and looked at him, then at her car. She noticed the back sticking out. "Oh, sorry, officer," she replied calmly, though clearly annoyed by his hostility. "I guess I didn't park close enough. I'll back up a little." She was willing to cooperate, willing to correct the mistake. But Burke wasn't interested in resolution. He waved her off dismissively. "What are you trying to fix? You parked like that and think you can just fix it. Do you even know how to drive, or did you just buy your license?" His voice was drenched in contempt. "Give me your license and registration. Hurry up." His arrogant, commanding tone made it clear he wasn't here to be reasonable. He wanted to make things difficult. Despite being deeply upset by Officer Burke's rude and hostile behavior, Serena stayed calm. She knew that arguing with an angry police officer on the street wasn't going to help. Quietly, she opened her purse, took out her driver's license and vehicle registration, and handed them to him. Burke snatched the documents from her hand, glanced at the photo and named Serena Thompson, then looked her up and down with a sharp, judgmental stare. A black woman in an expensive-looking business suit driving a relatively new car. That was all he needed to fuel his bias. Suspicion filled the space where professionalism should have been. "Serena Thompson," he muttered, chuckling. "Dresses like a lawyer, civil servant maybe?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. Even though he had no idea what her profession actually was, parking in a rush must be up to something shady. He began tossing out passive-aggressive innuendos, tapping into ugly, worn-out stereotypes. He implied she was uneducated about basic laws, that she didn't belong here, that people like her got ahead by cutting corners. His tone grew more contemptuous by the second. Serena took a slow breath, struggling to keep her boiling anger in check. She couldn't believe a police officer was acting like this over a minor parking mistake. But she chose not to respond with rage. Instead, she stood in her truth and relied on what she knew best, the law. "Officer Burke," she said, her tone cool, professional, every word deliberate. "First, not parking perfectly parallel is, at worst, a minor violation. I offered to correct it immediately. Second, the language and tone you're using are completely inappropriate, disrespectful, and beyond the authority of an officer on duty. You have no legal basis to make baseless accusations or demeaning remarks about me, especially based on how I look." She stared him in the eyes. "If you believe I've violated a parking rule, you may issue a ticket in accordance with the law. I know my rights, I know your limits, and I will accept a fine if it's issued properly. But your current behavior is unacceptable." Burke's ego took a hit. Being calmly, confidently challenged by the very woman he was trying to intimidate, especially one who refused to shrink, set him off. His anger surged. His prejudice flared. He couldn't handle being questioned, especially not by someone he viewed as beneath him. "You dare argue with me?" he shouted, stepping forward until he was uncomfortably close, his voice full of rage. "Who do you think you are? You know the rules. I am the rules." Then came the slurs. Disgusting, hateful words Serena had only read in hate crime reports. Words meant to humiliate, to attack her identity, her intelligence, her dignity, loud enough for every bystander to hear. "I'm warning you. Shut your filthy mouth," he roared, jabbing a finger toward her face. "Or don't blame me when I arrest you for resisting a law enforcement officer." It was clear now he had no intention of diffusing the situation. He was using his badge to punish a woman for standing her ground. But Serena didn't waver. "You have no legal grounds to arrest me just because I asked you to follow the law," she said firmly, her heart pounding but her voice steady. But Burke wasn't hearing her. At that moment, reason and legality meant nothing. To him, Serena's refusal to be silenced wasn't courage, it was defiance. And defiance in his eyes deserved punishment. No legal basis. Just that arrogant mouth is enough for resistance. Burke shouted. Without hesitation, he reached out and grabbed Serena's arm. Startled by the sudden force, Serena instinctively jerked her hand back. "Don't touch me." "Aha, there you go, resisting." Burke grinned like he'd struck gold. He used that reflex as an excuse to escalate, without restraint. The officer twisted Serena's arm behind her back, causing sharp pain. "Let me go." "What are you doing?" Serena cried, struggling to stay on her feet. Burke ignored her. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt and, with one harsh motion, clamped them tightly around her wrists. The metal dug into her skin. "Let's show you what it means to disrespect an officer," he muttered with satisfaction. The entire incident happened on a busy sidewalk. Bystanders stopped in disbelief, watching as a well-dressed woman was violently handcuffed over what appeared to be a parking violation. Murmurs rose. A few people pulled out their phones, some to record, others perhaps to call for help. Serena felt humiliation unlike anything she'd ever experienced. She was treated like a criminal, handcuffed and degraded publicly for a minor infraction, and for daring to stand up for her rights. The anger burned in her throat, but she forced herself to stay composed. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and raised her chin. Her eyes locked on Burke, not with fear, but with unflinching contempt and silent resolve. "You done?" Burke asked sarcastically once the cuffs were secure. Then he shoved her toward the patrol car. "Get in. We'll talk at the station." He flung the door open and shoved Serena into the cramped back seat before slamming it shut without hesitation. He turned away, likely to radio in her arrest as a disruptive and resisting subject, or simply to savor his sense of power. But what he didn't realize was that this moment, this act of arrogance and bias, was the beginning of his own downfall. Just as he finished his smug report over the radio, another patrol car pulled up behind him and parked beside his own. Burke frowned, surprised. The car door opened. Out stepped Sergeant Ruth Delgado, a seasoned officer with her blonde hair tied back tightly, and Lieutenant Jordan Reeves, a tall, sharp-eyed man known throughout the department for his integrity and influence. "What's going on here, Burke?" Sergeant Delgado asked, her tone professional but firm. She noted his car stopped in the middle of the road, lights still flashing. Lieutenant Reeves stood silently beside her, surveying the scene with a penetrating stare. Whether they'd heard Burke's vague report on the radio or were simply patrolling the area, they were clearly there with purpose. Burke, caught off guard, recovered quickly and tried to sound confident. "Hey, Sarge, Lieutenant. No big deal, just arrested this subject for obstruction, non-compliance, and resisting." He nodded toward the back of his patrol car. Delgado and Reeves turned to look. And then everything changed. Their eyes locked on the woman in the back seat, hands cuffed, her posture dignified despite the situation. Both officers froze. Their expressions shifted from neutral to shock, then concern. They knew her. Very well. "Good heavens, Serena?" Sergeant Delgado gasped, her voice full of disbelief. She stepped closer to the window for a clearer look. Lieutenant Reeves also recognized her instantly. They weren't looking at a random suspect. They were staring at one of the district's most respected prosecutors. And now it was clear something had gone terribly wrong. Lieutenant Reeves' face turned serious the moment he realized who was in the car. ADA Thompson. "What the hell is going on here, Burke?" His voice was low but furious, demanding an explanation. Hearing his superiors refer to the woman as ADA Thompson, Officer Burke felt a chill run through him. He glanced at the woman he'd just insulted and handcuffed over a minor parking issue and finally connected the dots. Serena Thompson, the woman he belittled, was no ordinary civilian. She was Assistant District Attorney Serena Thompson. The realization hit him like a punch. He had just unlawfully detained and insulted a deputy prosecutor in public. His career was likely over. Worse, he could be facing legal consequences. Burke's face went pale. Cold sweat soaked his collar. He looked at Serena through the car window, panic spreading across his face. Turning to Sergeant Delgado and Lieutenant Reeves, he stammered, there must have been a misunderstanding. "I didn't know it was ADA Thompson. She didn't show ID. It was a weak excuse, Serena. In plain clothes and off-duty, had no obligation to present credentials." Seeing no sympathy from his superiors, Burke turned to Serena, his voice shaking. "ADA Thompson, I'm so sorry. I lost my temper. Please, say something for me. I have a family. A small child." But his desperate plea was met with silence. Sergeant Delgado and Lieutenant Reeves looked at him with quiet disdain. They had known Burke was temperamental, but this went too far. "Burke, uncuff ADA Thompson." Now, Lieutenant Reeves ordered firmly. Burke fumbled with the key. Serena stepped out of the car, calmly adjusted her suit, and faced them. Her voice was composed but resolute. "Thank you, Sergeant Delgado, Lieutenant Reeves. I formally request a full investigation into Officer Burke's abuse of power, racial bias, and unlawful detention." Her words carried weight, and there was no ignoring them. Lieutenant Reeves responded on the spot. "Officer Burke, surrender your badge, weapon, and radio. You're suspended immediately pending investigation by Internal Affairs. Return to the station and remain there until further notice." "Is that clear?" Burke nodded weakly, his fate sealed. Burke, pale and shaken, could only mutter, "Yes, Lieutenant," before retreating to his patrol car, feeling like the ground had vanished beneath him. Sergeant Delgado and Lieutenant Reeves then turned to ADA Thompson, offering sincere apologies and expressing outrage over Burke's actions. They promised a full, fair investigation and that justice would be served without cover-ups. They offered to escort her home, but Serena politely declined, requesting only that the law be followed. The next day, Internal Affairs launched a formal investigation. ADA Thompson gave a full statement detailing Burke's insulting and threatening behavior. Delgado and Reeves also submitted reports, and multiple eyewitnesses confirmed that Burke acted aggressively, used verbal abuse, and applied force unnecessarily. Most importantly, Burke's body cam footage was reviewed. The video and audio backed up Serena's account, clearly showing misconduct. The investigation concluded quickly. Officer Jason Burke had abused his authority, used racially charged language, escalated a minor violation, and made an unlawful arrest without legal basis. His actions violated department policies and showed signs of criminal conduct. Internal Affairs recommended the harshest disciplinary action. After reviewing the findings, the Chief of Police approved the decision. Officer Jason Burke was permanently dismissed from the department. The firing was made public, ending his career in disgrace, costing him his job, pension, and reputation. While no criminal charges were filed at that time, the door remained open for further legal action by ADA Thompson or the DA's office. The incident sparked widespread discussion within the police force and legal community. It served as a sobering reminder of how racial bias and power abuse can still exist within law enforcement, and the importance of professionalism, accountability, and strong oversight. For ADA Serena Thompson, the event left a lasting emotional scar but also reinforced her commitment to justice. She now continues her work with renewed resolve, knowing the fight for fairness is far from over even for those inside the system. And she remains determined to speak out, proving that standing up to injustice, no matter the scale, is always right. A week after the incident, the name Serena Thompson appeared everywhere on local news headlines and legal forums across the country. Though she stayed away from media attention, ADA Thompson quietly returned to work each day, her expression calm but her eyes unwavering. Inside the courthouse, colleagues looked at her with a newfound respect, not just for her title, but for her courage. She had done what many only dreamed of, standing up to abuse of power on the very ground she served. Hallway conversations, staff meetings, and even casual exchanges among officers began to change. Gone were the usual jokes. Instead, quiet reminders were shared to be mindful of words, actions, and the weight of the uniform. A silent reckoning was unfolding throughout the city. The era of looking the other way was ending. 1 month later, the city's police department officially adopted a new code of conduct. It included clear language about bias-free communication and non-discriminatory behavior. Internally, the document came to be called the Thompson Protocol, a quiet tribute to the woman whose courage had forced the system to confront itself. While ADA Thompson remained discreet, invitations began pouring in from law schools, judicial panels, and civil rights organizations. At her first speaking engagement at Charleston Law School, she said only one sentence: "I don't need people to fear me. I just want them to remember that respect is never optional, it's a duty." The entire auditorium stood and applauded. This story teaches us one undeniable truth. Justice doesn't appear on its own, it requires someone brave enough to stand up, even if they stand alone. A simple act of abuse like a twisted wrist or a slur can strip someone of their dignity. But when that person refuses to stay silent, when she walks away with her head held high, the system itself must finally look in the mirror. So what can we do today? Learn to stop turning away. Speak up when someone is humiliated, even if it doesn't happen to you. And 5 years from now, if each of us speaks up one more time, ask one more question, the system can no longer pretend not to hear. Will racism end by 2045? Maybe not. But it will no longer be accepted as just the way things are. And that's how real change begins. Note: this story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of raising awareness. It highlights issues of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating everyone with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose violence, prejudice, and injustice in all forms. Viewer discretion is advised.